everything has been built online. Everything has been built with that in mind, that I can go transition to live in that different time zone, that different part of the world, and still run the entire business unaffected from my laptop. And there's even that sense, like I said, when I redefined freedom, I realized that, I did not want to work all day, every day either. So I've even designed it in a way where, I can have that level of impact and that level of income without working all day, every day. So that when I take that time, I never have to take a vacation from my business. It gives me that real balance throughout every single day and week.
Hi, welcome to the Ronin Mindset. My name is Didier. I am your host. This is the podcast where we talk to digital nomads, global entrepreneurs, and expats, get their stories, get into some entertainment, get some information, get some education on how they have extracted themselves from the matrix and how you can do the same. And today we've got a very special guest. I'm really excited for this conversation. Adam Avena is a mindset and manifestation coach. Helps entrepreneurs and sales professionals create a quantum leap in their life so that they can make more money, love what they do, and most importantly, have more freedom to live the life that they want to live. So, Adam, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Steve. I'm excited to be here for sure.
Me too. I was really excited to have you on when we had our little pre-podcast chat. I was really intrigued by a lot of the stuff that you had to say, and I think you're going to provide a lot of value. But let's kind of back it up. Tell us a little bit about your background and your history.
Yeah, for sure. I actually came from building a pretty big career in real estate in downtown Toronto.
Oh, wow.
So, as you can imagine, I went the route that, a lot of people go, where I was chasing someone else's definition of success. And, it went successful as to that definition, as I've said. But, there was a point in my life, I call it my quarter life crisis, where I had everything I thought I wanted. I had the nice condo with the CN Tower view and the nice car and this and that. And there was something deep inside me that just knew that I was meant for more. And it, really took me down this path of having to relearn who I was and start to define success for myself in my own authentic way. And, through that journey, I ended up getting sober. I left the city. I left real estate. I built a business that's far more aligned with the kind of impact I want to provide for the world, and, really redefine not only success, but also what freedom looks like. And, through that process, I've gotten to this point where, I've really created a life for myself that I would have once just always dreamed of, and I didn't know how to tap into it before. And now I help other people do the same thing.
That's amazing. Was there any one thing, like a pivotal moment, that caused you to change course?
One of the most pivotal moments for sure was I got sober, and I had a mentor who said, what is the one thing holding you back? And it wasn't like I, was a crazy alcoholic or anything like that, but I did come to this point where I realized that the way that I treated substances, both marijuana and alcohol, was holding me back. So I looked at my life and I thought, what is the kind of life I want to live? Do I want 100% of myself showing up? Do I want to leave it all on the table, so to speak?
Right.
Or do I just want to coast by it like an okay life? And when I came to that decision, I got sober. And what getting sober did for me was it actually allowed me to hear my intuition speak again. It was honestly a spiritual experience getting sober, which some people might understand and some might not. And when I could finally hear my intuition speak, and I realized there was a different level of freedom, like I said before, that I wanted, and something more aligned with the way I wanted to impact the world, there was no ignoring it. I no longer could just go about my life the same way anymore. I had to listen, and that's what really initiated a lot of the change going forward.
That's a really kind of an insightful story, because society programs us for, like you mentioned, these definitions of success. And there's so much white noise out there that it can be really, really difficult to be able to listen to your intuition, whether that is, family pressures, societal pressures, substances, whatever it is. There's a lot of things that really stop us from tuning into ourselves and going after what we really want. We're chasing somebody else's dream of success. I did that same thing. We kind of had a little bit of the same background there with real estate. I had everything that I could possibly want financially, and I wasn't satisfied. I wasn't fulfilled. I didn't like what I was doing. But, I golden handcuffs at that point because I couldn't, I was making so much money, I couldn't just walk away and start. But when I got wiped out in the crash of '08, that was my turning point because I was like, okay, well, I'm not bound by this anymore. Got a divorce, lost everything. It was a very cathartic experience. And that allowed me to be like, okay, well, what do I really want? Who am I, first of all? And what do I really want out of life?
Oh, 100%. And it's moments like that too. Like I'm really big on there's a quote that everything happens for you, not to you. And sometimes when you're in the thick of it, like you said, with that cathartic experience of losing everything, at the time it was probably really hard to be able to see how that could be happening for you, how there was something that was meant for you to learn and change course in life. But looking back at this point, I'm sure, even though at the time it felt like your house was on fire, it felt like everything was so crazy, I'm sure you can now look back and see how that was needed for you to go through and how there was a lot that you took from that at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And it was needed too. And like you said, looking back, it's easy to see
Yes.
that I needed that kick in the ass to change course and pursue the life that I really wanted. Because when that happened, you're right. You're in the middle of everything. And I went through a couple of years of just straight out depression and like especially guys, we put so much of our identity in our career, our accomplishments, our possessions, especially US and Canada. Everything is focused on the materialism. You are gauged as a person by what you own. And that's wrong. But that's that stuff that's crowding out the voice of ourselves, our true selves.
Oh, 100%. And to your point, I mean, you said that. You also earlier talked about how society has conditioned us, going through this journey that both of us have gone through. A lot of it is unlearning a lot of that. And I talk a lot about reprogramming our subconscious mind because, to your point, our identity and our habits and our way of thinking and our intellectual mind, that comes from our parents, our teachers, our communities growing up. And yes, we can shift that to be more in alignment with what we desire in life and our own understanding of success, but that also comes from a place of unlearning those ways we were conditioned so we can get back to who we truly are and understand more of what our true definition of success therefore is.
I bet that's a big part of your coaching practice when you're working with clients.
100%. Yeah. And these days there's a lot of mindset and manifestation coaches, and manifestation has kind of become a buzzword these days. But when you crack right down into it, like what I teach is manifesting from the soul. And that has to do with really understanding who you are on that level. Because, even as, living this human experience, we actually experience this world or this life on three different planes of understanding. There's the intellectual mind. We have our emotional subconscious mind, which is attached to the body. And we are spiritual beings living a human experience. And when you can crack down into that and understand the different parts of you and what you're experiencing, you can really get to the root of who we truly are. And you can start to discern the voice in your head, which is your programming and which is your intuition. And when you get to that point and you follow your intuition, no matter what, that's when we can truly start to create the proper freedom that we're looking for.
Right. Which can be different for every single person, but that's the beauty of it. It's your voice, it's your intuition, it's your life, and we get one crack at it.
Yep.
So we're here. What you said there reminds me of a very impactful book in my life was Joe Dispenza, the Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself.
I'm a big Joe Dispenza fan, 100%.
Me too. Love it. And he talks about those three brains as well. And he gets into the deep into the quantum theory of manifestation and all that. But it is the two books I found that are really impactful for me and really overlap a lot are Atomic Habits and that Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And they both approach it from a different way, but there's so much overlap. If you put a Venn diagram, there'd be a whole bunch of overlap between those two books. One just goes at it from a physical sort of realm, and the other one goes from a more of a quantum understanding of it. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
When somebody is looking do just that, try and start stripping away and listening to their intuition and finding out, because I think there's a lot of people that are living lives of quiet dissatisfaction. What would you recommend that somebody do when they're starting that process?
That's a great question. For me, the first step really is always awareness. And, we have to really start to become aware of where our current beliefs come from. How are we feeling in certain scenarios? What is our thoughts on a day-to-day basis? What are the emotions that, if you've read Dr. Joe Dispenza, oftentimes we're addicted to these same emotions. So, if every single day, they say 95% of our thoughts are the same as the day before, what are those thoughts? Where did they come from? And when we can actually take the observer role, so not actually place judgment on ourselves for thinking these ways or feeling these ways, but just observe what that is and where it comes from, where we feel out of alignment, then we can start to understand the ways that we need to reprogram our mind to be within more alignment to our soul and to what's truly meant for us.
That can be very difficult to observe without judging.
Big time. It is not an easy process. And, a lot of it has to do with even reconditioning the way, our way of being, having to have tools, for example, like knowing how to reset your nervous system. Because a lot of people are constantly living in this, state of survival, right? There's a lot of people are anxious in today. It's taking over the world. And knowing how to reset your nervous system is one of those key tools you need in your toolbox to be able to come back to that neutral level, which will help you in observing without judgment.
A lot of that comes from the fight or flight instinct that we evolved with. We just don't have saber-toothed tigers hunting us right now, so our minds tend to find other ways to stress and make us anxious. But yeah, a lot of people are living in a state of constant quasi burnout. It's I mean it's not funny, but it's funny because there's for most people there's really not a great deal of threat. We create it
Mm-hmm.
in our head. So what's the first process starting to strip away all of that and get to yourself?
Yeah, I think that a big thing is, I talked about resetting your nervous system as a tool.
Yeah.
The more that we can sit in this space of, really detaching from our identity, detaching from our yesterdays and our tomorrows or our schedule for the day, that will allow us to start to go within and really listen and really understand what's going on. And there's different tools. Breath work is a great tool. If you are that very high, anxiety, that fight or flight, like you talked about, breath work is a great tool to go into the body and shut that down. Meditation is amazing. These tools will actually help you with coming into the present moment and looking within and being able to detach from our identities, from our yesterdays and our tomorrows. And, I will say too, when we're early in our journey with this stuff, it's something that we do have to develop. Meditation is not easy to those who are not avid meditators. And, rather than get frustrated with that, it's hard and, say that it's not for you, just practicing it day after day and focusing on developing even your will to stay focused on that and to block out those other, outside things that could be coming in and trying to disturb you is a practice in itself. And that's how we actually can continuously get to that point where we recondition our mind to be able to sit with itself, to be able to look within, and to be able to find that calm and peace in the present moment.
That can be very uncomfortable for people to actually confront themselves because we've spent so much of our time living a distracted life and not paying any attention to ourselves. I just started This is almost embarrassing, but I just started meditating about a year ago. I started the different meditation practice. I didn't understand it. I just thought it was some woo-woo stuff. I don't need to be a enlightened Buddhist monk or anything of that. So I just kind of like, I'm very into personal development, but I always shunned meditation. And once I started studying it a little bit and seeing the different methods and exactly what the goal was with it, I found it's one of the most powerful tools. I try and set aside time every single day to meditate, even if it's 15, 20 minutes. And I found it helped me a lot in getting clarity on where I wanted to go.
And that's coming from a different place then too. When you get, in that meditative state and you're able to create order in your mind, peace of mind, then that clarity coming through is from who you truly are, like we were talking about, rather than seeing things out in your external world or trying to, almost copy other people, thinking that that is a path you should go. So I'm
Right.
happy that you found meditation. You clearly seem to understand like the beginning stages of that process we need to go through.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm only about a year into it, and I still feel I'm very much a beginner in meditative practices. But I've been actually just amazed. And I was talking to a friend of mine who just started, and he's older too, late 40s, very successful, very into self-development, like I was, everything, but just started meditating literally like 5 weeks ago. So we've been talking about, different things and results from even having done it for just 5 weeks. And he is absolutely floored. But he was like me, he's just kind of like, new age woo woo stuff, but it's not.
It's not. No, it's not. And I'll tell you something too. I'm about 7 years in to avid meditation, and I still feel like a beginner myself. I think that a lot of us don't realize, we'll get all excited about personal development and, we'll barely just be scratching the surface. And a lot of people will start to think they've cracked the code to life. But if you stay humble to this work and you realize that it's a constant journey of going within and going deeper and deeper, you'll realize that there's so much more to it. And that's such a magical place to be when you can understand that it's a constant journey.
It really is. It really is. So let's take that a step further. Somebody finally strips away the noise. They listen to their intuition. Their intuition tells them, you know what? I don't want to be a 9 to 5 wage slave. I want to do something different with my life, whatever that may be, whether it's traveling or starting your own business or just doing something where you find a higher sense of purpose in what you're doing instead of punching a clock. What steps should they start taking at that point once they've identified that?
hmm So I think, after that, once they've identified that, starting to get clear on what you truly do want for yourself is such a powerful process. Once you've been able to strip away, that programming, like we talked about, what are our true desires? And, we even talked about, like, for me, I realized that when I was defining my life and defining what I wanted it to look like, there was a certain aspect of freedom where I was not tied to a physical location. There was a certain aspect of impact where I wanted to really help people, not just sell something for my own benefit, but transform someone else's life. And that currency was even, above money in certain ways. And even with money, I realized that, having more money will only allow me to, do more of what I love and be able to impact people on a bigger level. So I think getting really clear on, what your definition of success is, what lights you up, what you want your day-to-day life to look like, then we can start to move towards it and reprogram our beliefs and everything else to be in alignment with our true definition of success and what we're truly called for.
Yeah. Getting clear on that and making sure that it's your definition of success, not somebody else's, not something influenced, but purely yours. And I think once you identify that, once you're really clear, then it's just a matter of, okay, put that there, start building the steps to go toward it. And understand that as you go, things might change. You might
Mhm.
find a different direction. And that's okay because that first direction, I've taken a lot of detours, but I've learned from every single one of them. And those experiences have created the person that I am. And they've also refined my clarity on what I want going forward, who I want to be, and what I want my life to look like.
100%. And it will continuously evolve, to your point too. Like as your awareness expands and you understand more about who you are and how this life works, you will begin to evolve and you will be, in alignment or out of alignment with that next chapter. Every single quote unquote detour you took, you were meant to go through that. There was something you were meant to learn or grow into that is needed for the chapter after that. So, on that topic, I always say there's no wrong decisions because you're always taking a step closer to the life you desire, whether it's something you needed to learn for that or it's just a direct step. It's all towards that life that you're meant to live.
Yeah, I agree. And I think so many people are afraid of failure as if that will define them. And I think it's a step that you need to go through because I've learned more from the failures I've had in life and business, financially, socially, whatever. Those were my true learning moments. Those were the times that forged the character that I have.
Oh,
So I
for
don't think people should be scared of that. It's tough though. Again, programming.
programming, exactly. Yeah. And to your point, fear, they say it's an inch deep and a mile wide. So when you step into fear, you realize you're not going to drown. You can actually stand right in it. And going through this process of redefining our life, redefining failure is actually a huge part of it, in my opinion. To your point, you said it was some of the greatest lessons you've learned are
Oh,
through
by
failure,
far.
right? So I don't look at failure as most of society looks at it. I look at failure as just the lesson I'm meant to go through. And, if you want to go really deep, I have a belief that, as souls, as energy, we come to experience this human life to face challenges and grow and expand so that we can continue our spiritual evolution. That's why we're here. So by not facing challenges, by shying away from quote unquote failure, we're actually stunting our spiritual evolution, the very reason we're here for. And if you can look at the world and look at challenges in that light, everything will change for you.
Yeah, that's profound. I think a lot of people, do you see that a lot of people are actively avoiding challenges and discomfort these days?
These days, 100%. A lot of people, to your point, they allow fear to dictate their life. And when you allow fear to run your life, you've gone as far as you'll ever go.
Yeah, that's pretty much the end point right there.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it can be uncomfortable, but I've always been adventurous and just ready to go. But one thing that I've always had in the back of my mind, if something is uncomfortable or if something maybe causes me fear or hesitation, I know that's temporary. And when you are at the end of your life, that pain of regret, that is the thing that terrifies me the absolute most, is to get to the end of life and look back and say, man, I could have done this. I could have done this. I should have, would have, could have. That is absolutely terrifying for me. So if I ever have anything that's kind of blocking me, that's a sign I need to tackle.
And that's such a great way to look at life, really. That's such a great perspective to gain to help you look at where you should go and the decisions you should make. I always say death is our greatest teacher. And for some people, it takes being on their deathbed to wake up. For some people, it takes the death of a loved one to wake up. But we don't have to wait for that. We
No.
can learn from perspectives like that without having to actually, have these near death experiences or, have to experience a loved one's death.
Yeah. And that's been a common theme in people that I've talked to recently. Three people in particular over the past week, listening to their stories, and they have amazing stories and they've taken off and done all these crazy things and amazing things. But it was always a single point in their life. And with these three that I'm speaking about specifically, it was a serious, serious illness, like near death experience that caused them, they got over it, obviously, but it caused them to really step back and reflect. I'm like, what am I doing? I've just been a zombie. I've been sleepwalking through life, and this can end at any time. We always have this idea in the back of our head that, oh, I've got time. Maybe, maybe not. But I just don't think it needs to be a near-death experience for somebody to really take that step.
Exactly. I
I mean,
wholeheartedly agree. And that's
so
what,
let
the world is starting to wake up
yes,
slowly.
slowly
Yeah,
but surely. I've seen a
I'm
lot
sure.
more of it. And even just as far as living a more free life and more fulfilling life with the pandemic, a lot of people got a taste of that, a little bit of a taste of that with working remotely. And I think that's kind of started to open people's eyes about the different possibilities. Obviously, with your business, you're an incredibly successful coach. You've made it, quote unquote, made it financially, but that allows, like you said, that allows you to live the life that you want to live. Because right now you split time between Canada and Europe for the most part, right?
Correct. Yeah, Europe has my heart. It really does. And to your point, actually, I mean, this ties really well with what you're saying about people having the near death experience. There's a book, I forget the exact name. I think it's The 12 Regrets of the Dying. And there was actually this hospice nurse who was helping people, transition, who are very ill and on their deathbed into, that next stage. And this nurse came to realize that there was always the same regrets from people on their deathbed. And the number one regret was that people didn't live a life more authentic to themselves. And when I heard that and started to understand that, I realized I would lie on my deathbed regretting that I didn't live in Europe for at least part of my life. I'm really in love with Italy. But I really travel all over. Last winter I spent some time in Portugal. In a few weeks from now I'm going to be in Sweden, Greece, Paris, Italy again. So coming to that realization has allowed me to again define the life I want to live, and therefore build everything around being able to go spend the winters in Europe and the summers in Canada, or whatever feels the most aligned for me.
Right. And having that freedom to do so is a
Yes.
beautiful thing. I really think if people would take stock and just ask themselves that question, if I were on my deathbed right now, would I be happy with how I've lived my life? Or would I be like, man, I should. Well, now's your chance to do something different, like right now. Now, with Italy, I know you mentioned that a couple of times. Every time you say Italy, your face lights up. What is it about Italy that has your heart that really captures your spirit?
Yeah, it's something about the culture and just their way of life. I remember even as a younger kid when I was in my maybe late teens and I was starting to get into hustle culture and everything in Canada. I was starting to see how I needed to build my life, or how I thought I needed to build my life. And I went to Italy. I have some family there. And my uncle kept saying, Adam, why are you rushing? Why are you rushing? We don't need to walk so fast. Take in the scenery. Let's enjoy our walk. And every time I went, I would just slow down. And I was able to it was much easier for me to transition into that present moment we talked about before. And, even everything with, I don't know if you want to go down this road, but with the food in North America versus, all of the natural ingredients and the water that it's grown in and everything in Italy and Europe, it just feels like, that closer to natural life, how we're meant to live. And the feeling that I feel when I'm there is not something to ignore. And that's when I realized that I did have to include part of my life being there.
For me, Asia, Southeast Asia in particular, that's
Mm.
I get that same vibe. I knew when I showed up there, I'm like, yep, this is where I belong. Very easy. So there's going to be at least a part of every year in that area. I'm in Mexico right now. I have to be here for a little while. I got to get surgery on my shoulder, but as soon as all that is done, back to Asia without a doubt. Because of that. Now, with the traveling, how do you manage the logistics of your business? Because you have a very significant coaching business and a lot of moving parts. How do you manage the logistics of that with time zones and connectivity and all those different factors involved?
That's a great question. And, knowing that I had that in mind from the beginning, I've built everything in a way that's allowed me to transition to be there for periods of time without it affecting the business in any way. So, the way that I run my business, even when I've scheduled my, group, my calls for my group programs that I run, and even my, high ticket one-on-one clients that I work with, it's all at times where when I go to Europe, it transitions to be a good time for me to still take those calls there. So everything has been built online. Everything has been built with that in mind, that I can go transition to live in that different time zone, that different part of the world, and still run the entire business unaffected from my laptop. And there's even that sense, like I said, when I redefined freedom, I realized that, I did not want to work all day, every day either. So I've even designed it in a way where, I can have that level of impact and that level of income without working all day, every day. So that when I take that time, I never have to take a vacation from my business. It gives me that real balance throughout every single day and week where I constantly feel filled up and I don't have to go somewhere else or take time away to refuel, if that makes sense.
It makes a ton of sense. With your business structure, I know you have the one-on-one kind of the high ticket clients, and do you have group coaching as well?
Yes, correct.
And do you have other coaches who work for you in your organization, or is it just you right now?
As of right now, it's just me. In the near future, there will be other coaches that are operating underneath me. It has to be the right fit, and it's not something I will force unless it happens in that way that it needs to, for me to still provide that level of impact, if that makes sense.
Uh,
So for right now, I have cohorts that I run for group coaching programs. So one of the programs I run is called my Quantum Leap coaching program. And it's an incredible transformational program. Like, you should be a completely different person by the end of that program. And that's what manifestation is. Manifestation is manifesting a new version of yourself. And that new version of you is what attracts those different results.
That's
So,
right.
with that, the way it's structured is, I run one group call a week, and then I give everyone homework and access to me throughout the weeks to ask questions and work through things. So, because of that structure, it allows me to impact many people at once without it being too physically demanding. And like I said, giving me that burnout or, having to step into that hustle culture, which I'm not aligned with.
Right. And that can be a tricky kind of balance, I imagine, because at the same time you want to expand your coaching business and yourself, but you don't want to, yeah, get caught up back in that hustle culture where that's all you're doing. So how many people generally do you have in a cohort or a group coaching?
Yeah. So the most that I would have in one group is 20 to 30 people. And if it gets to that 30-person point, I'll actually break it up into multiple groups because I do find that it's good to make it a little bit more intimate and
Yeah.
be able to serve people in that personal way. They have the ability to ask questions, everything like that. So it's all designed very much so in that way.
Okay. And then what kind of tools you use for communication? Like if people want to reach out to you, I know Voxer is a pretty popular one for that, but what are your tools that, not just for communication, but your tools that you find important in running your business from abroad? Can you list some of those?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you're going super basic, I'll make it simple for everyone out there listening. We don't have to make it too complicated to run a business. You can run a business with a Zoom account and a Stripe account. And when I had actually started my business, I didn't even have a Stripe account. I actually was writing down credit card numbers on a piece of paper and telling people all the cards were run at a specific date because I didn't want to get caught in the weeds of the things that weren't pushing it forward truly. So I'll start with that. And then once you build it to a certain point, there's a lot of things that can help, like, a CRM with certain automations, will be specific to the business, which one you use, or a community platform. So, right now we're transitioning a lot to be on a specific platform where all questions can be asked in a certain place. All recordings are in a certain place, the calendar and schedule for the calls, just to make it very easy for people. And it, avoids more question, more kind of trying to consolidate information from different platforms.
That sounds really, really good. Important. What platform do you use, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, so right now we're in the process of switching. So
Uh,
I don't want to say preemptively just because we haven't made the hardcore, the set in stone decision on that next chapter, what it's going to look like. It's taken a little while to just vet out and make sure that it has every feature that we want, as well as being able to have the ability to have our personal brand rather than some which don't allow that. So, but there's a lot out there, right? If you think of, Kajabi, School, all these platforms that have a lot of functionality to host both a community and courses and calls and everything like that.
yeah, there's getting to be so many options available. Like I've had experience with School. I use Go High Level. There's a lot of different platforms, but I haven't really found one that I think consolidates every single thing. But I'm sure they're coming as well.
Yeah,
Because sometimes
yeah.
that communication. So there's always people working on it. So what does from your travels, what is one story that jumps to mind that's just interesting or kind of a movie moment on the road, something that you remember fondly?
That's a great question, I have to say. It's a little bit, I don't know if I would say it's a movie moment, but this is really something that jumps out to me. So I have to speak to it and, what comes up first. And when I got to Portugal last December, like I said, this is speaks exactly to what I was saying before about the culture. I got there and we were creating all these itineraries. It was my first time in Portugal, so I wanted to see different places. And we got there and we're 3 days in, and there was a day that we didn't have anything planned. So we went to grab coffee, went to a coffee shop, and we sat there, and I was trying so rigorously to figure out what the day was supposed to be like, what we were supposed to do. And this place was, like the owner was literally cooking in the back and taking the orders, one of those, lovely mom and pop shops that you find in Europe.
Best.
Yeah, just the best. And she came out and she was so excited, and I was asking her what we should do and all of this. And she said, "What should you do? You should eat." I said, "You're right. Yeah, we'll eat. Is there any places?" She said, "No, focus on what you're about to eat right now." And I said, "Okay, that's a good idea. We'll order and then I'll get back to figuring out what I want to do." Anyways, the food came, very simple meal, blew me away. The coffee I had was the best coffee in the world. And I was sitting there with my wife looking at the view on the beach, eating at this place. And I was like, why am I trying to rigorously figure out what I'm doing with my day? This is what we're here for. And we sat there for probably 3.5 hours. I probably had 2 or 3 coffees and talked to this, mom and pop shop owner for a good amount of the time. And I felt my nervous system slow down. I felt my mind stop racing and finally slow down. And I felt this immense peace from sitting there. Rather than seeing all these sightseeing things and going on hikes or adventures, it was like just sitting there and enjoying the view and the simple things in life. And it always sticks out to me. And although it's so simple, that's the point.
That is really the point of it all. I think one of the reasons that people are so just even on vacations, hustle and bustle and go, go, go and schedule and tightly an itinerary is you get what, 1 week a year or 2 weeks a year, and you've got to try and fit all of this stuff in this. But when I travel, obviously I'm fortunate. I can just go spend time however long I'd be there. When I feel like leaving, I leave. But yeah, that slower pace where you just, okay, I don't have to do anything. I can be here, be present. I remember this little breakfast spot I used to get. I'd get two breakfasts because they were just so good. I had to have two. It was a little spot in Cartagena, and the great view and great service, and kind of a little small mom and pop shop like you were talking. But the food was just amazing. The crepes, it was just, and I would just sit there with no schedule and just enjoy. And then eventually, I figured, okay, maybe I'll go do this. But it was all just in the moment, whatever I felt, and that's just the best feeling. I hate having to rush. I like to really just sit and enjoy the culture and the experience of wherever I'm at and be present.
Exactly. 100%. And those
Amazing.
are those moments where we remember that there's a different way to life that a lot of us don't live or don't know is out there or turn a blind eye to. And it doesn't have to be the way it is in North America with that busy hustle culture, 9 to 5, 1 week of vacation a year or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah. No, it doesn't. So one final question, Adam. What advice would you give to somebody who feels stuck in their 9 to 5, but they dream of a more freer, more adventurous life? They yearn for something more. What step should that person start taking right now?
That person needs to listen to that voice inside them that's telling them that there's more to this life. There's a lot of people here who are listening to this who have felt at some point in their life that they're meant for more or that things can be different. There is a reason that you feel that way. And the more you can lean into that, and the more you can explore that and be honest with yourself and break the pattern of being yourself, the more we can move towards that and define a life that's truly authentic to us so that we do not have to sit on our deathbed and regret not living that life more authentic to us.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Absolutely perfect. If anybody takes anything out of the podcast, rewind and watch that segment again. So, any final thoughts or anything else that you want to put out?
No, the only thing I'll say is, first of all, thank you for having me on here.
Well, thank you for coming. I know you're busy, and I appreciate your time.
Yeah, you're doing great things with this because a lot of people need this message. And the only other thing I would say is to anyone who listens to this and feels called to make a change, don't let fear stop you. Do not let fear stop you because there is a life that you're meant to live out there. And it all starts with making one uncomfortable decision.